Hello, class. I wanted to provide you with another explanation of the difference between management and leadership. In particular, addressing the question the student had about a reading on George Washington, which indicated that George Washington was a good leader because he was a good micromanager. So let's see if that's actually possible based upon our definitions of management and leadership. So let's see if I can get this to switch. There we go. There is a lot of confusion about management and leadership, and those who aren't true management and leadership scholars will use the terms in incorrect ways. So the first question we need to ask is, are they synonyms? Are they actually the same thing? Different words for the same thing? Or are they antonyms? Can you be a good, is it even possible to be a good manager and a good leader at the same time? Or are the skill sets so different that it's not possible to be both? Or is it in the middle? Can you be both? And there is a lot of confusion around the two terms. So let's see what leadership scholars tell us. First of all, let's look at Marcus Buckingham. Now, we didn't cover Marcus Buckingham this week, but he is a leadership scholar, does a lot of work in the area of leadership and management. And here is what he says are the differences between management and leadership. He says that managers see the differences, and he calls these strengths, in each of us, and then managers are able to utilize their strengths to build a successful team. Whereas leaders see commonalities in each of us and utilize those commonalities to build a successful vision. So you see in that definition of leadership and management, there is some differences, that managers use the strengths of their employees almost like resources to do something better for the organization, where leaders kind of tug more at our heartstrings a lot of times by finding those things that we all have in common and then building a vision that's good for the whole organization around those commonalities. So a little bit of difference there, but it is kind of subtle. Your author, Nordhaus, actually lists the differences between management and leadership, saying that management is more order and consistent, whereas leadership is all about change and movement. Management will be doing things like planning and budgeting, establishing agendas, setting timetables, very process driven, whereas leadership is more about establishing a whole direction, creating a vision. So more of a conceptual, big picture type of a way of dealing with individuals and with organizations. And we have talked about and read about Cotter this week, who is really, I believe, one of the biggest experts in leadership theory as it's associated with change. And he's very specific about the way that he defines management and leadership. He says that management makes systems of people and technology work well day after day. So again, establishing a process, putting that process in place so that it works for the foreseeable future. Planning and budgeting, organizing and staffing, controlling and problem solving. So those day-to-day functions that are necessary for an organization to run smoothly, to run consistently. But occasionally an organization needs to change, and when that occurs, when the need for change occurs, then Cotter says it's time for leadership to step in. So leadership creates the systems that managers manage and changes them in fundamental ways to take advantage of opportunities and to avoid hazards. So the systems that, or the processes that managers make sure are in place, that they manage on a day-to-day basis, are actually established by a vision that a leader sets forth. So a leader creates vision and strategy, communicates and sets direction, motivates action, aligns people, and so forth. So a much bigger conceptual process than what happens on a day-to-day basis. So there is a difference between management and leadership, but organizations, according to Cotter, need both. When organizations have a lot of high competencies in management and leadership, they're able to run smoothly on a day-to-day basis, while at the same time look forward to tomorrow and the changes that may need to take place in the organization in order to confront what's coming over the horizon. However, most organizations either emphasize leadership or they emphasize management. So it's sometimes hard to find an organization that's actually good in both areas. When you have management without leadership, the company is often unable to change, and so they see their competitors moving very quickly ahead of them, and they're just kind of stuck in this process that the managers are making sure runs smoothly on a daily basis, but very quickly become outdated. And then when leadership exists without management, the company is almost always in chaos because they have a strong, charismatic leader who is always thinking ahead, but not establishing the process well enough in order to provide some consistency in the organization. Most of the time what we see in corporate America, and y'all tell me about what happens in education and in the military because I'm not as familiar with that, but in corporate America what we normally see are organizations that are overstaffed with managers. It seems to be a little bit easier to evaluate and develop management skills, and a little bit tougher to develop leadership skills. And so we begin to write competencies in corporate America around management skills, and promotions tend to occur based upon individuals who are good at management skills. And leadership, sometimes we just think, well, you're a leader or you're not, but as we're beginning to learn from our readings, there are actually some ways to develop leaders. But corporate America hasn't done as good a job at developing leaders as they have managers. So most of the time in corporate America, we see an overstaffing of management skills. Again, the Cotter model looks at high competency in leadership or low competency in leadership. So it's a continuum between high and low competency in leadership, and then high and low competency in management. You can see from each of those cells what happens in organizations if they have kind of an imbalance of one over the other. So if we have high competency in leadership, but low competency in management, so great charismatic leaders in our organization, but nobody there to set processes to help us on the day-to-day drive that our organization needs, then you have a very innovative, adaptive, energetic organization, but it could be on the edge of chaos because it's just changing too much. There's too much vision. There's too much change taking place. If you have high competency in leadership and high competency in management, that's really where we want to be. So that upper right hand box where you are able to meet today's commitments to stakeholders while at the same time adapt the enterprise for what you believe is coming in the future. So good at both. But again, that's not what we see a lot of times. We see a lot of times high competency in management, low competency in leadership, which is the bottom right-hand box, where you have a solid company, may have high market share, but it is bureaucratic, all kinds of processes, all kinds of procedures and policies, unable to adapt to a changing environment. And then the worst case scenario is when you have neither management or leadership, and the enterprise will soon just go out of business because you have no processes in place to keep what's already good in your company, and you have nobody who's helping you move forward to confront what's happening in the future. Now, if we use this and discuss the book about George Washington, I think I would go back to the very first slide and say that in my opinion, the author was confusing the two terms and using them as synonyms. They're not synonyms. So if George Washington actually was a wonderful micromanager, but couldn't set a vision, then he really wasn't a leader, he was a micromanager. Now, I am not an expert in George Washington, but from everything that I've read about him, he was able to set a vision while at the same time doing some acts of management, so even some micromanaging. So I would say George Washington was actually good at both. But we wouldn't say he was a good leader because he was a micromanager. We would say he was a good leader because he set a vision. And then he actually even was able to micromanage on top of that. So he had the best of both worlds. So hopefully this will help a little bit clear up some of the confusion. But if not, just let me know and I'll take even a different approach to help us understand what's going on. All right, hope all's good and I will see you in the posts.